So I am extremely happy, excited, and extremely honored to be interviewing the amazing Bob Burg. And I would love to discuss with you not only about the Go-Giver program and the coaching program that you have, but about you yourself and what you give out to the world, what you provide for the world. So please, would you please share with everybody a little bit about Mr. Bob Burg?
Well, that's very kind of you, Carly. I appreciate that. Really, I began my professional career as a broadcaster. I was first in radio and then in television. Probably the worst television news anchor you've ever seen. Now, I could read the news. Don't get me wrong, I could read the news, but when it came to journalism, it wasn't me. I was 24 years old, right out of college. I had no idea of the news, and I really didn't care. And I think I was probably even a little bit too positive for the genre anyway, just sort of intuitively. My idea of a good newscast opening would have been to say something like, "Good evening, everyone. I'm Bob Burg. In the news tonight, everything's great. Go to sleep. We'll let you know if something comes up." And so I very quickly found I was not a newscaster anymore, got into sales, and realized that as much as I intuitively understood that selling was about providing value to others, I had no clue as to how to do it. And so I began sort of a quest to learn how to sell. So I would get books, and I'd read these books, Zig Ziglar and Tom Hopkins and all these great, this is 30 years ago when I started doing that, and I'd get the, back then, audio cassettes. Now, of course, there's CDs, but they were tapes back then, and I'd go to seminars. I really learned and studied sales and realized that studying sales is really, first of all, studying people. It's studying how the mind works. It's studying how people work. It's really learning about yourself. And so in order to be an effective salesperson, let's say, and in order to provide that value to others, you first have to sort of work on yourself and improve yourself, and you get to see a lot of ways in which you might there might be a gap between where you are now emotionally and as well as other areas and where you want to be. So from studying that, I found that really helped me a lot in all areas of my life. And from there, I worked my way up to sales management and leadership, and began then teaching it eventually. And it's been a really fun career getting to do that for the last 25 years or so.
What I would love to know is, how did you go from the Bob Burg of that, okay, and what inspired you to actually become a speaker, motivate others, teach others, and how the actual whole premise of the Go-Giver came about?
Well, the speaking sort of happened naturally only because as I was really learning sales and succeeding in sales and sharing with other people because I love to teach, and I guess there's a part of me that likes to entertain, so that's the broadcasting part, and it's sort of, so speaking is sort of that combination of entertainment and educating. So I get to have fun doing both. And when I realized that there was a way you could make a living out of it, well, then I thought, wow, this is really a neat thing. And I started studying how to do that, how to have a successful speaking business, because like anything else, it's a business and has to be approached that way. The idea for the Go-Giver came about because as I began speaking, I started out speaking on one topic and sort of went into something that was really very much something I had to learn, which was networking, prospecting, and creating relationships with people, which in a sense was natural, but in a sense wasn't. And so I had to bridge a gap there. Once I did and had a bit of a system I could share with people, that's what I began really teaching from stage. There were some friends of mine who said, you really should write a book and get that positioning, and that will allow you to have a more successful speaking business. So it was really for utilitarian reasons that I wrote Endless Referrals. And that was a how-to book. And it basically just said it could teach a person who didn't feel they were really proficient at sales how to really go out there and in a very comfortable way be able to create and develop relationships with people that result in what I call the know, like, and trust relationships, which are necessary for people to want to do business with you and refer you to others. It was a how-to book, and it sold very well, and have enjoyed that a lot. I wrote a few other books, but I began to really read a lot of parables, the business fables. Now, I had read them from when I first started in sales. There was Og Mandino's Greatest Salesman in the World, and James Classen's Richest Man in Babylon, and of course, Ken Blanchard and Spencer Johnson came out with The 1 Minute Manager, which was a huge hit. These are great books. You could learn with a very quick read. You could just get this great information. And Spencer Johnson's 1 Minute Salesperson, and gosh, I'm just trying to think of Who Moved My Cheese. He then wrote, but there were all these other parables too, and I'd enjoy them. I travel a lot, of course, speaking, and so I'd get them on the airplane. It was a quick read. And I'd find myself recommending them to others. And of course, we know that storytelling is a great way to help people connect with a message. So I thought, what if I could take the message of endless referrals, which really, again, the premise is all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust. What if I could take that and turn that into a parable, a short fable? So I had the idea for the title, The Go-Giver, which, while it's a playoff on the term go-getter, and there was a great book written years and years ago by Peter Kine called The Go-Getter, which is one of my favorite books, another parable. And there's no different. There's no natural division between a go-getter and a go-giver. We love go-getters because go-getters take action. They get things done. All the greatest thoughts in the world, if you don't put action with them, nothing's going to happen. So many go-getters are also go-givers, and every go-giver is a go-getter. I always like to say the opposite of a go-giver is not a go-getter. It's a go-taker. It's that person who feels almost entitled to take without having added value to the person, to the process, to the situation. But so we took the term go-giver, and I began to write it, and within minutes I realized that there's a big difference between writing a how-to book, which is just sharing what you know on paper, basically, and writing a fictional story, which is what the Go-Giver was. So I realized I really couldn't do justice to it, and really couldn't make it what I want on my own. Fortunately, I have a knack of finding people who are a lot more knowledgeable than I am and better in different areas, and being able to surround myself with these great people. And one of them I thought of right away was a guy named John David Mann. John was at the time the editor-in-chief of a magazine I used to write for, and people who were in the know knew John was the ghostwriter of some very, very popular and major selling books in certain niche industries. And I knew John was and the big joke with John, the way I really got to know John was, of course, when he was editing my articles. And he would often write back with the corrections, which editors will do. And sometimes as a writer, there's almost a little bit of a defensiveness when you have your articles edited. You know that because you've written so many articles. And it's not that you don't think that they're great at what they do. You know they are. But you're worried, is something going to be taken out of context? Is something going to be cut off that really is a point? But John, who's so brilliant, and he's such a humble, nice man, he would always write back very tactfully. He'd say, well, Bob, I cut this here, and I changed this a little bit here. And he'd say, is this okay? Which editors don't. But he did, and I'd always write him back and say, John, not only is it okay, you write my stuff better than I write my stuff, and he did. He always made me look much better, yeah. And so he was the first person. He was the only person, actually, I thought of that I would want to work on the Go-Giver with. And I thought, well, he'd be a great lead writer and storyteller because he's so terrific at it. I called him, I asked, and as he tells a story, and it's kind of a neat thing. He was very busy at the time because he was very much in demand. He is now too, but he was back then. And he said to his fiancee, now his wife, back then his fiancee Anna, he said, I really don't have time to even look at something like this. But it's Bob, we're friends. It just goes to show that no like and trust relationship sometimes gets you in the door when otherwise it might not. So he took a look at it, and then he and Anna came down to Tampa, which is across the state from where I am, to visit her mom, and then they drove over to Jupiter, which is where I live, and we had dinner together. We talked about the story. I gave him the small treatment, if you will, I put together, or the basic outline and he, about 3 weeks later, he called me and he said, I think we've got something here. And I remember I was very cool on the phone. Okay, John, well, good. We'll talk about it and we'll start getting it. After we hung up the phone, I'm like, yeah, because I knew John would do a terrific job with it, and he did. And he really brought the characters in the story and alive. And fortunately, the book's been very successful. We've had a real fun time with it. I
would love you to tell everybody what are the 5 laws and give a pithy, okay? Mm-hmm. So how do people apply those laws in their personal life, not just in business?
Well, the neat thing about universal laws and principles, as you know, because you study and you teach those things, is if something works in one area of life, it typically works across the board. And we always talk about success being in many, encompassing many different areas. There's success in terms of financial, physical, spiritual, mental, emotional, social. And what we find is if somebody's applying these laws in one area of their life, it's going to work in the other areas. And so, the premise really of the Go-Giver is nothing more than shifting one's focus from getting to giving. Now, when we say giving, we simply mean constantly and consistently providing value to others. And shifting our focus from ourselves to the other person is in providing value is not only a nice way to live life, it's a very financially profitable way. It's profitable financially, but in every other way in terms of creating relationships with people. So really that's what it's about. It's that shift in focus from an I focus to a you focus. And the laws, there's 5 laws, the laws of value, compensation, influence, authenticity, and receptivity. And really, a person would need to follow all 5 of the laws because they work together in conjunction. It's not a matter of just following 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. It does need to be all 5. And people who are successful in the various areas of their life either intuitively follow these laws or they've learned these laws, whether from us or from anyone else. There's nothing new about these. These are just the way they're put together. And so the law of value simply says your true worth is determined by how much more you give in value than you take in payment. But let's not mistake that to say you're giving something away for free or you're not making a profit. You are. It's just understanding there's a difference between price and value. See, price is a dollar amount. It's a dollar figure. It's finite. It is what it is. Value, on the other hand, is the relative worth or desirability of a thing to the end user. In other words, what is it about this thing, this product, this service, this concept, this idea, this opportunity, what have you, that brings with it so much worth or value that someone will exchange their money for it and be glad they did while you make a profit. And just to make this a little bit more concrete, I like to use the example of hiring an accountant to do your taxes. He charges you $1,000. That's his fee or his price. But what's the value he's bringing you in exchange for that $1,000? Well, let's say he saves you $5,000. Let's say he provides you with the security and peace of mind of knowing it was done correctly. So we see there's concrete value, the $5,000, but there's also conceptual value, which is the peace of mind, which is, I think what's at the MasterCard commercials, it's priceless. So he gave you more in value than he took in payment, so you feel great about it, and he still made a very significant profit. Well, that's the kind of that's the kind of relationship we want to have with anyone with whom we do business or have a personal relationship with. And in this case, we're talking in the financial aspect. And we just recognize that as we do that, we provide more in value than we take in payment. Not only does everybody win, but both parties are a lot better off than they were before. See, what we need to realize, I think, just my opinion, is that money is simply an echo of value. We could say it's the thunder to value's lightning, which simply means the value comes first. And when the value comes first, the money is simply a direct and natural result of the value that's been given. Now, we talk about the law of compensation. The law of compensation simply says your income is determined by how many people you serve and how well you serve them. So where the first law says to provide more in value than you take in payment, this law number 2 says that that it's also a matter of outreach, that to the degree you provide that exceptional value to the lives of more and more people, you'll be rewarded with more and more money. We could take the first, so value is very important, that's the foundational law, but it's not enough just to provide value to one person. It's also a matter of reach. So we could say that we could take the first 2 laws and say exceptional value plus significant reach equals very high compensation. Law 3, Carly, is the law of influence. This just says your influence is determined by how abundantly you place other people's interests first. Now, when we say place other people's interests first, that doesn't mean to be a martyr, it doesn't mean to be anybody's doormat, it doesn't mean to be self-sacrificial. It simply means that, the best way to build relationships is focus on providing value to the other person. Focus on them, not on ourselves. Again, all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust. Well, there's no faster, no more powerful, no more effective way to elicit those feelings toward you and others than by taking your focus off yourself and providing value to them. Law number 4 is the law of authenticity. It simply says the most valuable gift you have to offer is yourself. In the story, Deborah Davenport realized that she learned a very valuable lesson, and that is all the skills in the world, the sales skills, the technical skills, the people skills, as important as they are, and indeed they're very, very important, they're all for naught if you don't come across as your true, from your true, authentic core. When you do, people respond to you in a very positive way. On the other hand, when they sense that you're not really yourself, but that you're I guess the correct Latin phrase would be phonus balonus, that you're not really, then they don't look at you in the same way. They don't respond to you in that same way. And the law of receptivity simply says the key to effective giving is to stay open to receiving. Breathe out, breathe in. It's not one or the other, it's both. And breathing out and breathing in, giving and receiving, simply two sides of the very same coin. And we've got to be willing to do both. See, all the giving in the world, the providing of value, all of that, it's great. But it's all for naught if you're not willing to receive in like measure. When you don't, you cut off the flow and it doesn't serve anyone. And as long as your focus is on the give, focus on giving value to others, you've earned the right, not the entitlement, but the right to receive.
So me and you all started this because I wrote a piece on integrity. And so going into all your laws, and we got very clear on a piece that I wrote that people definitely had an issue with the last law, which is about receiving. So I would love to discuss what we had talked about, which was mind viruses.
Sure. Well, that's a phrase that my friend Randy Gage came up with. I believe he came up with. He speaks about it or writes about it a lot on his blog, and he talks about it. And basically, he put into words something that I think many of us know. I think many of us know who study abundance, if you will. And that is that for many people, there's a sort of an unhealthy relationship with money. I think it goes back for most people probably to a combination of upbringing, environment, schooling, the media, television shows, movie scripts, where there are so many messages of lack. You see them in so many movies where if you look at the subplot of so many movies, and Randy brings this up great in a vignette that he does, that so much of the subplot is that, the poor people are all good people and they're all happy, and the wealthy people are all sad and miserable and nasty. And that's not the way it is in real life. They're good, bad, happy, sad of both. And so what happens though is we get these messages not on a conscious level, but on an unconscious level. From the time we're really little. How many people have been asked the question, hey, when you grow up, would you rather be wealthy or happy? John David Mann and I call that the treacherous dichotomy, right? We could also call it the false dilemma. A false dilemma can be defined as the unnecessary use of the word or. Wealthy or happy. Why or? How about both? Are you a giver or a receiver? Why or? How about yes, both? Are you a nice person or do you finish first? How about both? And so really that's what it is. So the mind virus, as Randy calls it, is really that we don't know that we have this relationship because it's on an unconscious level. One of my favorite books is Psycho-Cybernetics, written in 1960 by Dr. Maxwell Maltz. And he shows us how the mind works and how it's really programmed to help us accomplish whatever we believe we're supposed to accomplish. So if our mind is filled with prosperity and our mind is filled with that, yes, we deserve abundance, well, that's what we're going to do. If not, then every time we get close to it, we're going to sabotage ourselves and get back to where we think we're supposed to be. So Dr. Maltz, in that great book, classic, he shows us not only how the mind works in that way, but how to reprogram our minds so that first we're aware of it. So we've got to be aware of that mind virus, if you will, before we can do anything about it. Once we're aware of it, we still have to go after the tools and learn from the tools that help us overcome it.
So you would say everything, like I agree with, is that it's both and. We can be spiritual and we can be abundant.
Oh, of course, absolutely.
And when we are in the state of giving, if those unconscious mind viruses are running, we are going to have these twisted view that everyone's going to take advantage of us. Mm-hmm. And so that if we get in touch with those unconscious issues and deal with them and learn to receive, then we can be very abundant, prosperous, and provide all those laws.
Yeah, and Carly, and I think it's very important that we point out that when we say, well, that we think people are going to take advantage of us, that doesn't mean that nobody will take advantage. People are people, and but it's this though, it's understanding something can be a possibility, though that's not what we're focused on. It doesn't mean that Stephen M.R. Covey wrote a great book, The Speed of Trust. He also wrote another great one called Smart Trust. He wrote it with Greg Link and Rebecca Merrill. And he shows that, just trusting everyone and anyone just for, that can be dangerous. It's not a matter, and that's not what we're talking about when we talk about prosperity consciousness. It's being aware. Mm-hmm. But it's coming from a place of abundance and knowing that, that by and large, unless someone proves themselves to not be trustworthy, we should look at them we should give them the benefit of the doubt. That doesn't mean we allow ourselves to be taken advantage of. And I often say to people that, if you're nice and you find yourself taken advantage of, it's not because you're nice. It's because you're doing things that allow yourself to be taken advantage of. So at the same time, when there's no dichotomy between spirituality and abundance, there's also no dichotomy between having an abundant mindset and still understanding there's a real world out there that we need to be aware that there's the good, the bad, and the ugly, and so forth.
I always look at it as money just makes us more of what we already are.
Exactly.
So if you're an amazing person
Right.
before you had money, more money is just going to make you more of an amazing person. And you can use that abundance and then go help out so many other people.
Of course, absolutely.
So the other thing I would really love to talk about is I hear all the time, the amazing Bob Burg. He actually responds to my Twitters. He actually responds to my Facebook. No other speaker does that.
That's funny.
No, I'm serious. And that there's an actual sense within your actual company and there's actually a sense of community. There's an actual sense of support. And I think that has actually really made you somebody that people feel they can really reach out to.
Thank you.
And I don't know if you're really aware how impactful that is.
Well, I appreciate that, and I think there are other speakers who do that. I don't think I'm the only one, but thank you. But I think really what it is it's I'm just in alignment with who I am. I talk about, in fact, a good way to look at this is, let's say, with different people who write different blog posts. If you notice, there's some people who write blogs who they write the post. Then when people comment, they don't necessarily respond to the comments. That doesn't make them good or bad. It just means that's not in alignment with. That's not what they are. That's not what they do. There's some people who don't even have places for people to post. There's other people who post in there. They comment back and forth, and there is that sense of community. And I do that, but that's in alignment with who I am, and for me to do something different wouldn't be in alignment with myself, with my authentic core. But the other people who maybe do more of where they blog great wisdom, and I read their blogs and I love it, but their thing isn't really to have a sense of community in which they're part of it and responding. They do a different thing. So I think really what it comes down to is we all have our different styles and our different ways. What I think is important, that whatever our way and our style is, we do that. For me to hide behind 3 layers of people answering the phone and direct, it wouldn't be me. And anybody who knows me would know that that's not me. But there's other people who it wouldn't be their style or their personality to kind of be right. So I think it's just who I am, and I do the best I can when I'm in town and in front of the computer to get back to people as soon as I possibly can and to be very responsive to people. Otherwise, we make sure if I'm not there, we make sure somebody. And I do answer all my own emails, my own tweets. I do that all myself. But we make sure if I'm not there, somebody does get back and says, Bob's out of town, or send something back, because we don't want somebody to, ever feel as though they're not being acknowledged. But again, I think what it is, and for anybody, the best thing to do is just, again, be in alignment with who you are and your way of doing things, because we all have our own styles.
Well, where I was going with that is because, as we talk in a lot of your laws about values and all this other thing, is customer service. And I truly believe that you have really mastered on another level of really being out there for people and that customer service piece, which I think is so important. And where I'm going with this is I really want to touch on the Go-Giver Certification Program. And talking to your coaches and all the beautiful interviews I've had here this couple of days, that was one of the big things they brought up. I asked over and over and over again, why did you choose Bob Burg's Go-Giver Certification Program out of all the other programs that are out there? There are a lot of certification programs for coaching. There are many. Why choose you? And every time, every single person said, it was that sense of family. It was that sense of community.
We do have a great sense
that
of
was
community.
That sense of support. And the accountability factors, and there is the responsibility factors. So I would love for you to talk about your actual Go-Giver Certification Program and share with everybody what that is, and I want to know what your vision for that is.
Yeah, and we do have a great community, the Certified Go-Giver Coach Program, and really what it is the the materials that I've developed over the last, 25 years almost now. Including the endless referrals, the Go-Giver, the part about the influence and persuasion, all the different things we do, we make available to people for a fee to have the right to be able to teach that material, to be able to coach that material, to be able to consult with that material. And we teach them on an ongoing basis, excuse me, how to use that material and how to do it. And Kathy Zader, who's put together the entire program, who's done such a terrific job with that, and Dixie Gillespie, who actually wrote the entire what's the word?
The manual, the actual program
the
itself.
actual program, just did a great job with that. So far from being just me, and I always say I always get the credit, but I have so many people who work in partnership with me who just really do great work. And the coaches themselves, these are successful people. These are people, many of them have their own successful business already, but they wanted to take the information and be able to teach it to others as well. Some of these people have already been successful coaches. See, some just have been very successful entrepreneurs, whether owning a real estate company, being a very high-producing franchisee, being someone who's been involved in technology. But they wanted to kind of not necessarily change directions, but sort of utilize this as an adjunct part of what they already do. There's others who are coaches, and they would like to use the Go-Giver. They resonate with the Go-Giver way of sort of doing things, and so they've wanted to be able to have that, to teach that information. So, we're working with people who, we're not just, we don't do a thing where, just trying to fill up the numbers, get as many people as we can, take their money and leave them. No, it's nothing like that at all. It's really making sure that these people are in alignment with the Go-Giver philosophy, that they can utilize it in their business to provide value to themselves and provide value to others, and that they have the right spirit themselves. And we have really a terrific family of coaches. And it's been just a joy. It's been a pleasure to work with them. And we do see this getting bigger and growing. We're in a couple of countries right now, but we have calls coming in from different places. And can we get this here? And can we get this there? And we really enjoy that. So, and again, with Kathy at the helm and Dixie Gillespie with the curriculum and being the master coach. Wow, it's been a great experience.
So what is your vision for that, though? Where do you see it going? Where do you want it to go?
Oh, we do see it growing in numbers, but in a very controlled fashion. The numbers aren't the goal as much as the numbers are the result. And so what we want to have is enough coaches wherever those coaches will be able to add value to others. And it's a big world. It's an abundant world. And so without putting exact numbers to it, having a ton of ambassadors of the Go-Giver message.
Walking ambassadors.
Right, personal walking ambassadors, exactly.
I would love for you to share with us, what is your mission for yourself? What is your vision?
Well, my mission and vision and all those things, I've got them in different areas of my life. If there's one overriding one, and again, my big thing is to the degree you provide value to others in the aligned with the area that is, as my friend Mike Littman calls it, your asset of value, because I think we bring different things to the table and different things to the world, and I think in a sense I'm really following in my dad's footsteps, who has had such an amazing way of dealing with people and making people genuinely feel good about themselves, and I think really that's my mission, if you will. It's really to make people, to help people to genuinely feel good about themselves. That's really, I think, my strength, and it's my strength because I've gotten it from my dad and mom both. But my dad is sort of, like I take after him a lot. We're the person who's always been in the public, the public as dad was, and he'll always say, the reason because he came from a very, very impoverished background, and as an entrepreneur made a great living, and he'll always say the reason he made that great living is because my mom was there, and they really were partners in life as well as business, and did so terrific, and still to this day they do so terrific as a couple, but my dad was always that guy who was the person in the public eye. He just had such a great way, and still does, with people. And I was able to, emulate that and learn that from my dad, and because of technology and having access to, in the world getting smaller, I guess, in that term, have been able to get that message out to a lot more people. But it's not just saying, make people feel good about themselves. There's a way to do it. And I think through the Go-Giver methodology is the way that we can provide the most value to the most people, and help the most people feel genuinely good about themselves, which helps spread that and so forth.
what would you say to people how important it is to be literally start putting into implementing business consciousness, like literally providing like the 5 laws into all businesses?
Well, if you look at great businesses, that's what they do. And they do it not because they read The Go-Giver, and they were doing that long before they did that. In fact, when the book came out, what we found was that the businesses and the leaders of these businesses who were already doing that, those were the person who got the book, and they, were buying thousands of them and 10,000, because they wanted their company doing. And they would say that, this is what we've been doing. We've just wanted to help. Sometimes a third party, you know how that is. When a third party comes in and says the very same thing that the leadership's been saying, and a good leader always knows, since it's not about them, it's about those people they choose to add value to. And so sometimes the best thing a leader can do is take a third party. And whether it's in the form of a book or whether it's in the form of an audio program or what have you, and pass that around and let other people, get it that way. And so, you look at companies like Southwest. They're the embodiment of a company that, whether they provide more in value than they take in payment. And, it's not because their fares are low. I know that's what they do, but their fares could be higher than they are. And they still provide much more in value. So I like to say with the law of value, that has nothing to do with low price. You can charge a premium price for something as long as you're providing a lot more in value, in that customer's experience than what you're taking in payment. That's the law of value. But Southwest Airlines certainly provides great value. Do they serve a lot of people? Law number 2? Absolutely. They serve a whole bunch of people. Do they put the other people's interests first? Yes. In their case, they start out by putting the interest of their employees first, their team members, and then the employees put the customer's interests first. Are they authentic? Law number 4, about as authentic as can be. Law number 5, do they receive? They've been profitable every year they've been in business in an industry that has notoriously lost money. And here they come along, at one time the new kid on the block, and every year they make a lot of money. So they are a company that embodies the Go-Giver message, and there are many companies. They may not do it to the same degree Southwest. Is a very special company. But certainly many companies, that's exactly what they do. And those are the ones that over time, they take that one over. Those are the people that are able to sustain long-term profitability.
And that's why I brought it up, because I wanted people to understand also that the values that you teach, that the 5 laws that you teach, why it is so important to have that in business, and that those businesses do thrive more on much bigger profitability. And so they can incorporate those in there, that there is an actual value to doing that. And then the last thing I'd love to know from you, just because I think it's so important for people to know about you in this way, is what would you say is your legacy?
Oh, the legacy would be, the people I've been able to help to communicate in a way that's both tactful and effective.
Hence Bob Burg Communications.
Good thought.
It's been such an amazing honor to be with you and be here this weekend with you and interviewing everybody and the coaches. And I'm just so thankful and grateful that there's somebody out there like you to actually have these programs in place, and the teaching and the love that you give, because you're not just a person that's just a business person. You really do give of yourself in so many other ways. And I'm just really happy that people have a chance to actually be with you, work with you, and learn from you.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate you, and your entire team has just been a pleasure to have with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bob.
Money is an echo of value. It's the thunder to value's lightning, which really just means that the value comes first and the money is a natural and direct result of the value provided. See, we can really summarize or encapsulate the first 2 laws by saying that exceptional value plus significant reach equals very high compensation. There's no faster, more powerful, more effective way to elicit those feelings toward you and others than by putting that other person, by taking the focus off yourself and putting that other person's interest first in terms of how can I add value to this person's life. In the story, Deborah Davenport learned a very important lesson, and that is all the skills in the world, the sales skills, technical skills, people skills, as important as they are, and they are very important, they're all for naught if you don't come at it from your true, authentic core. Breathing out, breathing in, giving, receiving. They're simply two sides of the very same coin, and they work best in tandem. I think my legacy is really just to help people to genuinely feel good about themselves and to perhaps teach others how to help people feel genuinely good about themselves, to be able to communicate with tact, with kindness, and with effectiveness. A go-giver is simply someone who has learned that shifting their focus from getting to giving. Now, in this case, giving simply means constantly and continually providing value to others. Knowing that not only is that a nice way to live life, it's actually a very financially profitable way as well. Not only does a go-giver understand that it's best, it's most effective to go from an I focus to a you focus, but that go-giver also follows all 5 of the laws. They follow the law of value, of compensation, of influence, of authenticity, and of receptivity. So when you follow those 5 laws and understand that shift in focus, understanding it's not about me, it's about adding value to that other person, that's a person who's a go-giver, and that's a person who is very, very effective in pretty much every area of their life.